Let's talk about President Trump and Ukraine now. With us tonight is Kiron Skinner, a professor of international relations and political science at Carnegie Mellon University, and she joins us from San Francisco. Merry Christmas to you, Professor. Good to see you.
Merry Christmas to you as well and to all the viewers.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about this arms sale. 50 caliber sniper rifles is really what we're talking about. That's the decision that the administration made early in the week to sell to Ukraine, about $40 million worth when you include the accessories and ammunition. But then later in the week, they agreed to sell Javelin anti-tank missiles to Ukraine as well. What does this signify to you? What's the intention of the administration?
That the president has made a decision that his Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense had wanted, along with the National Security Council many, many months ago. And it really is a response to what's going on in the ground. The Russians have pulled out of the joint Russian-Ukrainian observation group, and monitors are saying that ceasefire violations are happening in the last few days in staggering numbers, around 16,000 of them. The Russians will not attempt to help this crisis end, and it's a violation of sovereignty. And the president is responding by living up to his commitments related to sovereignty of nations.
And what are the risks of this deal?
I think there are some risks in terms of Russia maybe escalating the conflict. But if the United States really does provide anti-tank munitions to the Ukrainians, the lethality of the Ukrainian response to any escalation goes up, and the Russians have to really calibrate what they do to what could happen to their own forces along with the separatists. The risk also includes the fact that the Russians just won't come to the negotiating table. There is a United Nations, an American and European call for UN peacekeepers to be put in place. The Russians have balked on that. But if they follow through on what I've just described, they will further isolate themselves in the international system. And perhaps that's the biggest risk of all.
And, you know, to those who buy into the Russian collusion story, this would seem to be completely antithetical. In fact, the Wall Street Journal pointed that out in an op-ed, the editorial board there, when it wrote, quote, critics of the arms sale could increase the U.S.-Russia tension, but those are some of the same people who say President Trump colluded with Mr. Putin to win the election and wants to appease him now. What do you make of it?
The way I see it is that this decision, which has been supported by the national security leadership of the Trump administration, with the president having had many months to think it through, means that the administration is taking on Russia very firmly at the end of the year. Think also about the national security strategy just issued a few days ago. It also fingers Russia as a great power competitor that's bent on expanding its influence around the world, one that the United States has to combat.
So would you say that this is a component of a, quote, Trump agenda, foreign policy agenda?
I think the administration has come to really understand, those around the president, what America First means and what the Trump doctrine means in particular. And at the core of it is a commitment to promises around sovereignty of nations, around taking on any adversary or even ally or strategic partner that violates the interest of nations. And that's what Ukraine is really about. Earlier this month, the Secretary of State said the senior most issue facing U.S. and Russia is the situation in eastern Ukraine. And so the president is just making good on the commitment to helping shore up a nation that's been violated in terms of its political and territorial survival.
Professor Skinner, we appreciate your perspective on this, and again, Merry Christmas to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.